Hey guys, Ark and Templar. So last time I talked about how the three Lannister children are a trinity possessing Tywin's body, spirit, and soul. And that Cersei possesses Tywin's spirit, his ruthlessness and his lust for power, but with none of the mediating characteristics of Tyrion. The fact that she's a woman matters less than she thinks it does. And she uses it as an excuse for all of her atrocious behavior. Which brings me to, I guess, the point I should get into is Cersei is one of the most controversial characters in the show. She shouldn't be, because I just think she's a bitch, but a lot of people really like her. A lot of people defend all the things she did because Robert was a dick. And Robert was a dick, and I think Robert was an absolutely atrocious king and a worse man. But does that excuse everything she did and does? No. No, not really. Much like most of the people in this show, tens of thousands of people died and suffered as a result of her selfishness. So I can't really give her a pass. Just because her husband was a douche, she was probably a bitch to him too. I'm not excusing Robert. Robert's a terrible human being, but so is Cersei. So in a sense, they kind of deserved each other. But yeah, she is the worst aspects of Tywin without any moderation. And you can see this in the way she does everything. In the way she drinks, in the way she has sex with everything that moves, in the way she just kills people, in the way she does reckless stuff like try to get Marjorie Tyrell imprisoned and rearming the Faith Militant. Like, that whole plan is just... It's Rube Goldberg. It's incredibly complicated and dangerous, and she just thinks things will just work out because she wills them to. Because she grew up seeing her father do stuff like what she's trying to do, but her father was smart. Her father worked her father worked constantly, read constantly, talked to people constantly. He worked extremely hard. He was a smart guy. He was well educated. He was well informed. He had years of experience playing the game. Cersei is fucking lazy. She basically doesn't have many duties. Robert never wanted her around. She knew eventually, when Robert was off warring and stuff, she could have spent that time to get advisors and tutors to teach her, to teach her how to do stuff, to teach her to be like her father. To be educated, to be informed about the realm, to understand politics, to understand finance, to understand all this other stuff. She could have wielded a great deal of power, particularly since her husband wasn't interested in the realm. She could have basically kind of been like how Tywin was to Aerys, but she really didn't because she's lazy. And that's a big aspect of Cersei, is she's kind of like a child. Well, she is a child in a woman's body. And she thinks just because she wants something, it'll happen. Because to her, that's her perception of the world, and that's how Tywin worked. Tywin just wanted something, and it happened. She didn't see the hundreds of hours he spent, all the deals he called in, all the favors he gave to make things happen. So she doesn't get it. She just thinks that you have power and you wield it. And people do what you say because you have power. And Tywin, well, he seemed like that on the surface. Behind the scenes, he was willing to make deals, to compromise, etc. But Cersei doesn't get that. Because she's willed with no brains. Is basically what she is. And a lot of people defend her and say, oh, she's just so hard done by. She's a woman in a patriarchal society. Yeah, but there's other female characters like Sansa and Brienne who don't act like fucking psychos. And I'm sorry, I don't care what happened to you, but if you're going to be queen and you want to be the big boss and you want to be regent and you want power, then you can't act like a psycho. You can't plunge the realm into war, chaos, and etc. to fulfill your daddy issues and your dick husband issues, which is what she did. So I don't know. I don't like Robert, and I almost feel like having a bit of sympathy for her. But she's just a disaster. And this is kind of a theme I find interesting with a lot of the Lannister kids, is the nature versus nurture question. If they had have grown up differently, would they be different? If Tysha wouldn't have happened to Tyrion, would he be the degenerate he is now? A lot of people say, well, of course he wouldn't be. He's a good guy. He's a romantic at heart. If he had have stayed together with Tysha, he wouldn't have gone to drinking and whoring. Well, maybe. I'm not so sure, though. It's an interesting question. Did Cersei become the way she was because of her affair with Jaime, because of her mother dying and not having that kind of proper feminine influence in her life, and of Robert being a dick to her? Or was she just like that? Is she just a sociopath? And was she just born that way? And Jaime, if Jaime didn't have Cersei there corrupting him, would he have been a better man? Would he have been a stronger man? Would he have been the heir that Tywin so wanted? And that's kind of a big theme I find with the Lannisters, is nature versus nurture. What would Tyrion have been like if he wasn't a dwarf? He became a smart guy, and he tried to have some compassion for the weak because he was weak. He might have very well become just as much of a monster as his father, just as much of a violent man as his father if he had been born normal. It's very interesting because I find with the Starks, a lot of them, their personalities are very well defined, and I don't really think external things influence them as much. They don't really seem to. I mean, to some extent, this counteracts what I've said about like Ned being the second child, but they don't really seem to go back and forth between one thing and another. Ned doesn't go back and forth between being Mr. Honorable and Mr. Super Dishonorable Evil Guy, like in the way Jaime does, or the way Tyrion does. They don't have the wishy-washy nature. And Cersei kind of has that a bit in the show, where she she believes herself to be kind of like that, but she really isn't. So Cersei Lannister is basically her father, worst characteristics, without any of the redeemable things about him. And while her general incompetence limits the harm she can do to the realm, it also makes her less sympathetic. And I keep talking back to her father because that's what the Lannister children are, all reflections of their father. They all exist to some extent in his shadow, and are pieces or reflections of him as a man. So, while Tywin's crimes are greater, he's also competent. He ruled the realm for 20 years and ensured peace and prosperity, and people cheered for him. Even though he's humorless, brutal, and cruel, people cheered for him. People loved him because he ran a tight ship. I'd imagine he wasn't very corrupt. Like, I don't think he skimmed the top. When he was Hand of the King, he probably just put the finances in great shape. He was probably just, albeit in a very brutal, harsh way, but he just doesn't strike me as the kind of man who is corrupt in the, not morally corrupt, but in terms of like a governmental form of corruption. He's very lawful evil kind of guy. But like, Tywin can lead an army, Tywin can make deals, he's an impressive figure, he's a man's man, he's a statesman. He has a lot of good things going for him, counteracted by a lot of bad things. Aside from being hot, Cersei doesn't really have many good things going for her. And I guess that's kind of her point. I guess that's just why she's like, I was born a woman. I was born with a vajayjay, and it's really hard. Well, it's hard, Cersei, because that's really the only thing you have. And it's the only thing you have because you've never aspired to anything beyond that. You never really tried to win over your husband. Like, if you look at the show, everybody fucking hates Cersei. No one likes her. Absolutely no one in the cast, other than Jaime, who only really liked her because she was having sex with him, likes her. The only people who like her are people who she offers her body to. Um, there's not really another character in the show other than like maybe Ramsay Bolton, who absolutely no one likes and no one respects. The only reason she has any power is because she's beautiful and because of who Daddy is. And that's about it. She's not smart. She's not a good administrator. She has simply put the wrong person in the wrong place at the wrong time. And that is why she fails. And that is why she is a disaster. And that's also why so many fans defend her. Because she's a victim of the patriarchy. This is Argent Templar signing out.